Hey there, everyone. This is Dr. Yam, your Keep It Simple coach for content creation tips and more Facebook community for new solopreneurs, freelancers, and coaches. And this is another one of our live coaching series. How's everyone doing today? Let me get us started. Hey everyone, it's Dr. Yam, your Keep It Simple coach. I hope you're all having a great day today. We're going to continue on with our learning series on content creations and marketing methods, the basics. And so today we're going to get right into it. What we're going to continue on is this. We've already, in one of the prior sessions that you had a chance to take part in, we are focusing on content creation and marketing basics. This is going to help you as we prepare for our upcoming boot camp. And you're going to hear more about content design essentials and more a little bit later. But today's question that we want to get on the table is, what is content strategy? And even more important, why do you need one? Now, for those of you who haven't met me before, I am Dr. Yam, the Keep It Simple coach and host of the Content Creations and More community. And over there is where you will find me. And I'm going to see if I can put my little note over there. And you can find us over here and just find us over at smallbizsociety.com. And over there, you can join us and get other cool knowledge nuggets, I like to call them, as well as other learning events and tools that are going to help you as a solopreneur, freelancer, or coach, small business owners, that are going to help you to grow your business using content strategies and more. So today we're going to continue on with our learning series as we drop another nugget. So if you haven't already done so, please make sure you grab your biz journal. You're going to need it. And we're going to step right into that question. So again, when we think about starting and using content marketing, we kind of went over that definition in a prior segment, but the real question has to do with why you need a strategy. Well, like everything else, it's kind of like the old saying goes, if you don't care how you're going to get there, then any map will work for you. And you're going to put yourself at risk not having a plan. And a plan or strategy is just a very well thought out plan. So when it comes to marketing, specifically in the area of content marketing, I wanted to share with you a couple of key things you really need to know. And it's really a series of questions that you need to answer in that form of your strategy. So what I'm going to share with you is, here are the questions you need to ask yourself that when you have the answers, will formulate your strategy. It's just that simple. Now, some of you may have come through corporate America and you may know this whole thing about a strategic plan and where everybody gives in and we have this whole format and everything. We don't have to go through a large formality. However, there are just some really key bits of information or questions you really need to ask yourself. So I'm going to pose these questions to you, and I want you to really think about, what is your answer to these questions? The answers, and the more well thought out you are about answering these questions, the better off your strategy can be for creating a plan of action that's going to meet your particular goals. Now, pulling out my notes. And the thing about about a content strategy, it's kind of like, again, that foundation that's going to help you to really attract and connect with your intended audience. And the reason for this is, remember, when I talk about a content marketing, it's about that ongoing conversation, that story that you're telling your intended audience. And there's the opportunity to connect with that intended audience, your target audience, so that you can take them through a buyer's journey, an opportunity for them to know, like, and trust you. So along those lines, you are able to share who you are, what your brand is about, what your solution is about. And all that is formulated inside of the content that you're going to be able to create. But before you get into creation, which is where a lot of people start, on creating rather than on the planning to create, that's where the strategy kind of comes into place. So many companies and many larger agencies, this is where they're not missing the mark. And as a small solopreneur, freelancer, or coach, we tend to miss this particular step. So I want to make sure that you all have a good understanding of having a strategy. It doesn't have to be very formal, but you do want to be able, like I said, answer these questions on them. So these are going to be, believe it or not, taking you back to writing and who, what, when, where, how. And those same types of questions are the ones that you want to have an answer for. You ready? All right, let's get you started. Give me 1 second here. Okay, so one of the first questions you want to ask yourself is, who are you talking to? And again, we're talking about when you're having that ongoing conversation with that BFF, your intended audience, that's who you're talking to. So who is that target audience that you want to be able to reach? Now, if you have not determined fully who your ideal customer is, then you're going to have to go back to the basics of starting. Inside of our community, you will find an ebook that breaks it down for you to help you come up with answering the question, do you know your target audience? Is the name of the ebook inside of our community. So if you haven't already downloaded it, make sure you do go through those. It is a great example, takes you through the steps. And once you answer those questions, you will have a well thought out ideal customer, or persona, as we like to call them, or avatar is another name for it. But again, who are you talking to? And that is who your audience is. And if you need to do the research, do the research. Now, you may have more than one, and that's okay, but who is your ideal? Another question you're going to need to think about and asking yourself is, what are you trying to get them to do? What are you trying to get that ideal customer to do? And as much as you have a solution to the problem, as the entrepreneur that you are, what is the intended goal for them? This is where the buyer's journey kind of comes into place. And you wanted to be able to take them through a series of experiences with you where they have an awareness of who you are. They're going to give some consideration of whether or not what you have to offer is really meeting their needs. And then they're going to make the decision and hand over the credit card. And so you want to be able to ask the question, what are you trying to get them to do? Are you trying to get them to read your blog? Are you trying to get them to engage on a social post? Are you trying to get them to take you up on a freebie ebook to download? Are you trying to get them to sign up for a webinar? Are you trying, at the end goal is to get your big ticket item or to subscribe to a product or service that you have? What are you trying to get them to do? That is the question you need to ask yourself. Next, where and how are you reaching them? Now, this means we're going back to the spaces that you're having that conversation in. And in many instances, it's either inside of social media, in those channels. It could be inside of Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Reddit, Query. I never say it right. Those are the channels, just like TV channels, right? Where you're going to have your conversation. So where and how are you having those communications with? Or it could be, again, on your website, that the traffic is coming there and you're having that conversation and connecting with them inside of your blog space. So that's another question to ask yourself. Where and how are you reaching them? The next question you're going to ask yourself is, what are you going to talk to them about? Now, remember, you are the expert in your niche. So you want to be able to decide on the what you will talk about, those topics that you're going to select. And oftentimes I always talk to you about the fact that you should, as the expert, there are certain things that you should be able to talk in ad nauseum about. And what that means is that without preparation, without having a planned pitch, you can talk naturally and comfortably about the subject matter that you are the expert in. And so Out of that, I always kind of look at topics of five. So, what are those five key things, the top things that you could talk about when it comes to your niche? Those are going to be your topic selections. So, what are you going to talk about when you get in front of that audience that you found on the channel that they're hanging out in, that you've already identified as your ideal customer? Now, the next thing you want to ask yourself, another question is, how are you going to get all this work done? This is where you kind of look at, again, from a strategy perspective, is now that you know the who, now that you know the what, and you know the where, and you know the what again, as far as the topic and the type of journey you want to taking them on, then you get to decide about how are you going to get those pieces done, either yourself or with a particular team. Another thing to think about is, again, what problem are you solving? Again, when you think about what are you going to be talking about, it should be in a problem solving mode. You should know ideally what those pain points are and be able to connect with them. Another thing to think about when you're thinking of your strategy is about that niche that you have. What is making you unique in the work? This also is going to help you to separate yourself from your competition. So again, what are you going to talk about and what's going to separate you from the masses that they are wanting to really kind of turn up the dial and listen closer to what you have to say that is going to be worth buying from you? And then when we think about that creation mode and how are you going to reach them, then you're going to think about, well, are you going to reach them in your blog post? Are you going to reach them on a video? Are you going to reach them in an infographic? Are you going to reach them in a podcast? What forms are your content going to take? Those are the things that you want to think about. You don't have to do them all. Try one and get good at it and then start to expand. But that again is another question about what format is the content that you're going to create going to take. You choose one and get comfortable with the one. And again, you go into your channels. And then how are you going to manage all of this work? This is where the project management kind of comes into play. Your tools out there that will help you to manage your space. It could be a plugin that you have from your WordPress. I happen to use one called Neilio. You could simply just use a spreadsheet, or you can use anything that what we call like a content editorial calendar. It's a tool that'll help you to brainstorm the idea, give it some formation, identify the where, create the content, and then be able to publish it when we think about the whole content marketing and the process that we talked about in an earlier segment. Now, the reason why this is important is, again, you want to have a prepared way of making those connections with the people that you want to serve, who you want to be able to buy from you. That is the intent around having a strategy. Make a goal, determine who you want to sell to, how do you plan to do it, and where do you plan to make that happen, are all the basic questions that are going to help you to create a full content strategy and then pull it all together. And then you'll be able to do so in a matter of time. Then you can get to the creation part. But before you create, you got to have these other pieces and parts in place. And it's simply a matter of answering those questions as I've shared them with you. I hope you found this to be helpful. Let's see what we got here. Hey, guys. Hey, Nikki, how are you guys doing today? Any questions you got going on? Okay, let's see what we got here. What are you trying to get them to do? Right. So here, Nikki, what we're talking about is whatever your product or your service is, are you getting them to engage with you by way of social post and engaging with you online so that they can build a relationship with you? Or are you trying to get them ultimately to buy some type of service or product from you? That's where we talk about the buyer's journey, that there's an opportunity for you to nurture your customer first before you can start to hard sell to them. Where we typically make a mistake is that we tend to want to be in sell mode, and you're talking to somebody, selling to somebody who doesn't know who you are yet. And you've got to be able to build a relationship first. People are going to buy from you when they know, like, and trust you. Content marketing is a method that is a slow churn, I like to call it. It's a slow churn. It's not going to be like digital marketing where you're going to throw out ads and you're throwing money behind it and Facebook and you're thinking you're going to be able to get some ad sales. You'll get some, but you got to spend a lot of money to do it. Content marketing allows you an opportunity to create content that's going to reach your audience at different levels, and that you're building on these layers of becoming they're aware of who you are and what you're able to do. And once they know you, then they'll be able to like you. And if they like you, then they'll be able to trust you enough to hand over the dough. And that's where the question around is, what are you trying to get them to do? You want them to be able to buy from you. So as a financial service provider, and yet you're focusing on educating them first, absolutely, that's what you know. So that's your awareness stage. You want to be able to connect with a person, right, who has a desire to learn more or get better informed about financial literacy or about their financial wealth and well-being, right? That's how you want to be able to make the connections with them. So if that's the case, then in your blogging, in your social posts, and getting them to know who you are. If you're the expert in your field of financial services, you've got to prove that to them. And these are people, again, in your target audience. You may have a specific niche in financial services. For instance, I remember back when I was working when I was teaching in one of my first careers. And so there were individuals who were financial planners, and they focused simply on specializing with teachers or educators. So you have to think about who is your intended audience. Yes, you could sell to anyone, but everyone will not hear you. And so you want to be able to decide who is your target audience going to be. You want to be like that specialist, right? Just like I specialize in my consulting firm for education consulting, right? I typically focus with K-12, and I focus with schools in needs of improvement. So I'm not talking to every school. I'm focusing in on school districts who have a challenge with meeting a high levels of proficiency or graduation rates. They're not high performing schools. And so I'm going in to provide them that particular service. That's what my niche is for my consulting firm. And so when you think about it from your financial services, what is your expertise in your target audience going to be so that you can talk to that person? Remember, content marketing is about this ongoing conversation that you're having with your best friend. And so the topics that you're always going to be talking about that you're comfortable with are also about information that they need or want to know more about. And that's going to give you the topics that you're going to be able to talk about. So when you think about your industry, I want you to think about, yes, you're focusing on educating them first. And how do you do that inside of the different platforms? You're not going to be in every platform, right? You're only going to be the ones where you know your customers are. Let's see what else you got here. So how are you going to get all this done? This is where answering those questions come into play, because you want to be able to answer those who, what, where, why. And then you come up with a plan and a strategy that's going to help you to figure out, how do I create content that's going to allow me to make those connections over a period of time? And that's where your planning can come into play. So we're going to talk about that in another segment, is how you get the planning stages. There's a process, we like to call it, that is going to help you to plan the content that you want to put out there in a strategic and relevant way. That way you're not going to drive yourself crazy. And then the other nice thing about content marketing that I appreciate very much is, again, while it may sound like I tell this story, it's like it's a slow churn, but the nice thing about it is that content is something that lives longer than a Facebook ad. A Facebook ad goes out and it dies. A social post goes out and it dies. A blog, that's there for as long as you can keep it out there. And there's ways in which you can keep it relevant so the search engines are going to want to come out and find you. So that's what is most important, is the fact that that's why it does require a little bit more effort on your part. You put a little bit more sweat equity into it, but your content has an ability to get repurposed, and it can live a longer life than some of your quick wins like a Facebook ad or a Twitter ad that comes and goes, and you're not going to get much life out of it. So that's the kind of a difference between content marketing, is you're creating quality content that's going to allow you to connect with your intended audience. And there's also ways in which you'll be able to repurpose that same content. So you can kind of create what I call your core content or your evergreen content. And there's ways in which you can keep reinventing and repurposing that content as well. So we'll be going over that in one of the upcoming boot camps as well. So you'll learn how to move, but you got to come up with like your core content. And that way you'll be able to do spinoffs, and then they'll be able to recycle. It's kind of like, when we talk about it from speaking and when I do public speaking, it's kind of like what we call rinse and repeat. So you'll be able to put it out there, and then you rinse it off, and then you'll be able to repeat it again, because it's good quality content that can be repurposed, because you're going to put it in front of new eyes. And then you'll always be able to refresh the eyes that already have it. And then as you're taking your customers through that buyer's journey, they're going to have different experiences with you. What I learned from you in the awareness stage is going to be different than what I'm going to get from you in the consideration stage, because you're sharing that information and your knowledge and your expertise, and you're giving them a little bit at a time. And you're building that repertoire between you and them. And then they understand, hey, this person actually knows what they're talking about. I think I might want to do some business with them. So the thing is too, is that with content marketing, and you're getting that churn out there, is that part of that content marketing, one of the things that you'll learn has to do with creating your sales funnels, which we'll get into more in another segment. And inside of there is where you want to be able to always bring more people inside of your journey, so that a portion of them are going to go out. And that's why it's important that you have a specific audience, a target audience that you're speaking to. So if you wouldn't mind sharing with me, when as a financial service provider, who is your intended audience? Like, what particular segment of the population are you trying to serve? Like I said, I gave you the example of one person that they targeted was teachers, educators was their target audience. You might say, I target medical professionals, or I target freelancers, or whatever it is. You get to decide. And so those are the things that are going to help you to talk to those people and connect with them. And I know sometimes people feel like, well, I can help everybody. Well, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And so if you talk out into the masses, doesn't mean everyone's going to hear you. You have a greater chance of connecting with people and talking to those individuals, particularly that you want to serve and who want to get serviced from you. So veterans, perfect. So that means that the conversation and the language that you choose in your marketing materials, the information that you're providing in by way of your social post, the information you're doing in your blogs, not to say that you won't get other people, but if your audience are veterans, then that's the conversation in your marketing copy, and everything that you're doing is with respect to veterans. And that's who you're going to be reaching out to and connecting with. And there's hopefully you also have a story as to why do you choose that particular group versus another. If you're a vet as well and you have that connection, perfect. That goes back to your story. So one of the things that you'll find inside of the community, the content tips and more community, is there's a segment there that's called how to write your biz story. And this is where your story, your biz story is important because you'll be able to pull out from your storytelling about yourself and how who you are, because you want to bring your authentic self to the table inside of that conversation. And that's how you're able to take your story and use that also as content that you're going to be able to do in chunks in different ways. You'll be able to share it in your social media. You'll be able to share your story on your about page or inside of a blog. And when you're having conversations and making those connections with them. So the why you choose that particular segment should be a part of your story. And that's how people are going to be able to make the connections with you in particular. And that's what's going to separate you from all those other people that are sending out noise. And you won't be noise because you're going to speak directly to the intended audience that you're trying to service, which in your case happens to be veterans, as an example. So thank you for that question. Let's see, anybody else here? Make sure I'm not missing anybody. Okay. Okay. Any other questions before we give it end? All right. So always put your questions if I don't at the end of this segment. If those of you who are watching the recording, always feel free to put your comments below the video, or you can direct message me at any time. But for today, just wanted to give you that food for thought. And again, what are we trying to do when we need a content marketing? The first thing you need to think about is a strategy. So hopefully you found this to be helpful. Another segment for our content tips and more basics. And we'll see you on the other side. And as always, let's get busy. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.